So after one ridiculously sad and over-the-top premiere, we're back to deal with the aftermath of losing Miss Lou. You could call her Tin Chin if you want, either one is acceptable, but I tend to say Miss Lou. But that was just the craziest way to kick off the season, and now we have this episode which is called When We Go, because it's a callback to season 1 episode 10, where Jade told Miss Lou about how after his grandma's death in France, he had to fly back to the States to live with his uncle and how it felt like he was leaving his grandma there alone. But he told Miss Lou how a random woman who saw him crying at the airport bought him a soda, and after he told her why he was crying, she told him they come with you when you go. So now that Miss Lou is gone, this is how we pay tribute to her character, since we get to see how everyone is mourning her death throughout this episode, especially Kenny. But let's get into it. So the episode starts with Jade and Victor still in the bar with some livestock, since that's where they've been since the monsters created all of this chaos the night before. Jade leaves and goes to the barn where he finds Miss Lou's slaughtered corpse lying on the ground and Boyd tied up chanting what at first sounds like gibberish. But I'm pretty sure these are the same words that Boyd tells Kenny later in the episode, and he's repeating it so he can remember. But he's also traumatized since the monsters forced him to watch them torture her. But of course, we'll get into that more later. And on top of that, these evil bastards put the key in Boyd's pocket when they left him there. After Jade releases him, Boyd crawls over to embrace Miss Lou's corpse. Jesus. and I gotta say, man, it is just a rough time right now for the From family, especially Kenny. But then we cut back to the new mysteriously abandoned village with Jim and Kenny, where it looks like Jim has found some food growing in patches near a lake. And honestly, this is very interesting because this means now that the issue that they're experiencing with the crops in town is more of a local soil type of thing rather than a widespread issue that is affecting all of Fromland. Which means what Miss Lou said in episode 1 of this season about trying to plant crops in different soil in different locations as a suggestion was correct. So yeah. But back in the real world, Tabitha wakes up in Victor's house, and we find out that she fainted on their front porch, so Victor's father took her inside. Now, of course, at first, this seems weird to take a strange woman in your house who just fainted on your front porch rather than calling the police. But Henry decides to go about it in this way because Tabitha has Victor's lunchbox, which he knows that Victor had with him the last time he saw him before his family's disappearance years ago. So he wants to get some answers before anything else. But in this moment, Tabitha tries to leave, but Henry has his gun drawn, ready to put one between her eyes, and now we also know where Victor gets his eagerness from to shoot a bitch. Like father, like son.
Oh my God.
I warned you.
Was your leg is okay?
I warned you. Please?
Hey, Victor, no.
So anyway, Tabitha starts explaining to him how she got trapped in the town, but Henry's on edge right now, and he's not trying to hear a full recap of Tabitha's events in the town. He just wants to know how in the hell she got the damn lunchbox. So she finally tells him that Victor gave it to her. So then Tabitha starts telling Henry how Victor's been stuck in this strange town where he can't leave all these years. And because Henry isn't a dumbass, he decides that it's time to call the cops rather than believing some ridiculous story about a magical town. Tabitha pleads with him to not call the cops, but he reveals to Tabitha that it's too late because he has already called them, and she just needs to sit her ass down because they're gonna wait until they get there. Then back in town, Sarah goes to tell Christy at the hospital about Miss Lou's death. Then we cut to the shot of Boyd and Jade taking Miss Lou's body to the church, where we get to see Jade ask Boyd how come he survived if he was also there with Miss Lou, and Boyd tells him that they wanted him to watch. After Boyd leaves the church, we see him having flashbacks of what happened and how they tortured Miss Lou and how traumatizing it was. And the visuals we get to see of how she was tortured was some pretty graphic shit. I mean, it's pretty crazy to see a character that we know and love get tortured when she didn't deserve it. She wasn't a bad person, so it sucks pretty bad to see this. And then during this time, Donna runs up to get confirmation about Miss Lou's death from Boyd. Then we cut to Ethan and Julie as we see them also dealing with Miss Lou's death. At this time, Victor barges in, grabs his shit, and tells the kids that he has to go. Ethan really wants to know why he has to leave, but then he goes off on Ethan because he's also hurt by Miss Lou's death. He's like, I told you guys, this is what happens here. People die. And we're really just getting more of how everyone's grieving at this time. Back in reality with Henry and Tabitha, Tabitha shows him online how her family and everyone else in the town has also been reported missing. And of course, Henry is still having a hard time believing her since she claims to be the only person that has been able to escape. Then she proceeds to tell him about saving the kids in the tower. And in this moment, the cops arrive. And after Tabitha mentioned the kids in the tower, he gives her sort of like a strange look like he knows what she's talking about. So luckily for Tabitha, he tells the cops that it was just a false alarm and sends them away. After he comes back, he puts the gun down and reveals to her that it was never loaded and how he has actually never used it before, and then offers her some food. Back in the town at the station, Donna's having a rough time coming to terms with Miss Lou's death, and you can tell she kind of wants to blame Boyd because she feels like he risked everyone's life to save the animals, but the truth is Victor and Miss Lou came out to help on their own. And plus, Boyd definitely made the right move, trying to save as many animals as possible, even though Kenny and Jim found food. But of course, we'll talk about that more when we get to it. Over at Colony House, Fatima's still going through it while Ellis is trying to persuade her to go see Christy. But of course, she wants to be hard-headed and continue to suffer. Well, that's only until one of her damn teeth just gives up and falls out. Then she's like, oh yeah, you're right. I think we need to go see Christy now. So they rush over to the hospital, but Christy is not around. But Marielle is there to help. And since she's a pediatric nurse, she's experienced enough to help out, although Ellis and Fatima don't feel too confident about her, especially with her little addiction problem. But anyway, I would like to get into my theories about the situation with Fatima. So honestly, I think it's going to be one of two things. Either there's a little monster growing inside of her and we're finally going to see how the monsters are born, or she's not really pregnant and she only thinks she is. Because I think the first mention of Fatima's possible pregnancy was at the end of episode 6 of last season when she asked Christy for a pregnancy test. And since then, it was never 100% confirmed that Fatima was pregnant. Christy only tells Fatima that she's pretty sure that she is pregnant given the circumstances, which we never get to see what these circumstances were that made her so sure. Also, since we never see or hear of pregnancy test results from Christy, I doubt they even had one in the town to use. So my theory is that this is a misdiagnosis on Christy's part and something else is probably going on with Fatima. But let's see how it goes. Outside at the motel pool where there's no motel, Christy's trying to give Boyd some encouraging words to let him know that Miss Lou's death was not his fault. At this time, Kenny and Jim roll up with good news of finding food. But unfortunately at this time, Boyd has to walk over and tell Kenny the terrible news about his mom. Kenny sees his mom's blood on Boyd's shirt, and what's probably one of the saddest parts of the show's history happens in this moment. Kenny doesn't want anyone to calm him down as he stands outside of his mom's house calling for her to come to the door. I think I almost shed a tear in this part. I mean, I must say that the actor Ricky who plays Kenny did a damn good job. And I know he said before on social media that he watches these videos sometimes. So if you're watching this one, damn good work and props to you, sir. And I'm also sorry that the writers keep shitting on Kenny, but awesome work in that scene. Then Kenny heads over to the diner to get some alone time, and Christy comes in to console him and lets him know that his mom's body is in the church. Then we cut back over to the hospital where Marielle tells Fatima that she's malnourished and how she might also have a really bad special case of morning sickness. She says a really crazy name of whatever the morning sickness is, which I'm not going to try to repeat here because I can't remember that shit.
You also may have something called hyperemesis gravidarum. It's essentially really bad morning sickness.
But overall, I gotta say, I have no faith in Fatima's situation improving anytime soon. Honestly, personally, I think she's just turning into a damn monster or some new monster creature altogether. Then back at the diner, Kenny asked Christy to make his mom look nice for her funeral. And then she leaves him to get a little alone time. But at this time, the town is like, you know, f all that. And the jukebox starts playing Celebrate by Kool and the motherfucking Gang. And of course, just like in the trailers, Kenny destroys the jukebox and walks out. And you know, sometimes the town itself can be pretty damn funny. Because that was pretty cold. Then we cut over to the Matthews with Julie as Jim arrives back home. And Julie's pissed at him for not being there when her and Ethan was in trouble. And although Julie is going through a lot, the whole damn Matthews family is just dealing with hell right now. And I mean, you know, the whole damn reason why Jim even went out in the first place was to please Ethan and to also, you know, look for his wife, of course. But now that he's back, Julie's pissed because he left to please Ethan. And of course, Julie is still dealing with being traumatized by the whole cicada coma situation. That still doesn't change the fact that she has always been annoying. Like, sometimes you just wanted to shut the hell up. Back in the real world with Victor's dad, Tabitha learns how Victor's mom, Miranda, used to hear voices of the children trapped in the tower calling out to her. And keep in mind that these things were happening to Victor's mom before she even ended up stuck in the town. So obviously, to some degree, the people who are getting trapped in the town might actually be brought there to help. And of course, this theory doesn't apply to everyone, of course, because there is a lot of people there who have died, but I would definitely say it applies to some of them. Then Henry proceeds to show Tabitha around the house, and we get to see where Victor and Eloise slept. He then reveals to Tabitha how everyone just thought he killed his family after they went missing. Then he also admits to Tabitha that it seems like she just knows way too much to be lying about all of this, so now he wants to show her something down in the basement. Then we cut back to the town at the church where Christy and Jade have a hell of a job on their hands trying to prepare Miss Lou's battered, tortured, just destroyed body for a funeral. And the full zoomed out shot that they show of her really shows the kind of serious damage that they did to her. Shit was nuts. I mean, I'd say they really put some extra sauce on this kill because they had an audience around this time, which was Boyd. And although Frank's death in season 1 is still one of the most graphic deaths of all time in the box, in my opinion, and then also what they did to Frank's family, Miss Lou would probably fit right in there in like the top 3 most graphic deaths of the series thus far. But anyway, back at Colony House after their hospital visit, Fatima goes over to some rotten crops on the porch and starts munching away on them. And whatever the hell Fatima is turning into, it seems to be something else besides the monsters, because we've never seen them feast on rotten shit before. They seem to much prefer that fresh townspeople meat, so she might be turning into a never before seen creature entirely. Then back over at the church, Sarah brings in Miss Lou's favorite dress for Jade and Christy. Then at the bar, Boyd walks in on Kenny filling up containers with homemade alcohol because he's planning to go down in those caves and burn those monster bastards alive and send them back to hell. And Boyd, like the real friend he is ready to head down into the caves with him to fight till the death. And I gotta admit, that is some real stand-up shit right there. So Boyd takes out his little pocket knife, knowing damn well that ain't about to do jack shit, and deep down you already know that he's hoping that Kenny comes to his senses so he don't have to die with this fool down in these monster caves. And luckily for Boyd, that feeling that we already know that he's truly feeling deep down actually turns out to be true. He's able to talk Kenny down from doing this crazy shit and reveals to him that the monsters made him watch them torture his mom. And we're able to see that the Mandarin that Boyd was repeating, which I'm pretty sure it was Mandarin that he was speaking when Jade found him, was so he could remember to tell Kenny his mom's last words, which was, "Take care of him, he'll be alone now." Now this was a really good scene and a pretty sad moment, but I can't help but think, why in the hell didn't Miss Lou just say that in English? Why you gotta say that to Boyd with the risk of him mistranslating your final words, your dying words? What if he would have came back to Kenny and said some shit like your mom said, "Don't forget to turn off the stove"? Then that would have just ruined everything. So I'm just saying, that seems a little unnecessary. And of course I'm just joking. So those of you who like to get upset, don't get butthurt down in the comments. I'm just joking, but it is true. But anyway, back over at the church, Jade and Christy are now done. And before sending her off, Jade whispers those same words to her one last time.
You'll come with us when we go.
During this time, Boyd walks in with Kenny so he can say goodbye to his mom. Outside, Julie goes to Sarah's old place, which I guess she ended up getting back after what happened last season, I suppose. Okay. But Julie thanks her for helping her and Ethan get to safety the night of the chaos, and reveals to Sarah that she just doesn't want to turn out like her, trying to kill people and shit because of the voices in her head. And I do think that is a little different, because Sarah did reveal that the voices in her head was actually telling her to kill people so she could actually help people. And we don't really know yet what kind of voices Julie is hearing, but it doesn't seem to be those kind of voices. It seems to be a little more torturous, but still, I don't think that's gonna happen. Back with Henry and Tabitha, Henry tells Tabitha how him and Miranda used to be hippies and did a lot of drugs together, but stopped once Miranda got pregnant with Victor. Then years later on Henry's 35th birthday, they celebrated by doing some acid, and afterwards she started hearing voices and seeing shit. And honestly, given the story that Henry tells, I'm pretty sure he probably thought it was that last hit of acid all these years that drove Miranda crazy. Until Tabitha showed up, of course, but that was pretty funny. And while Henry continues to tell Tabitha the things that Miranda told him, which are the things we already know about the tower and the kids and saving the kids and all of that stuff, we cut back over to town to see everyone attending Miss Lou's funeral. And it's honestly just a sad moment to see. But during this time, we cut back to Tabitha as she's viewing Miranda's paintings of everything we've seen so far, and even some things we haven't seen. But we see the lighthouse, the Confederate soldiers, the little dirty bald-headed white children, the boy in white, the trees, the church, the town, I mean everything. But there is a guy with a yellow suit that I don't think we've actually seen yet. But you guys, please Correct me down in the comments if I'm wrong. And there's also some other visuals of things we haven't really seen yet, but Henry proceeds to tell Tabitha that there were many others before them that was chosen to try to save the children, but they all failed to do so. And then as we continue to cut back and forth between both scenes, after the funeral back in town, Boyd looks like he's got some ideas cooking up. Ellis walks up during this time to see if he's okay, and Boyd tells him that it's time for them to do something. They can't really sit around anymore, and that it's finally time for them to try to catch one of the monsters. And honestly, it really feels like they're starting to do a lot of things that we, the fans, have been asking for quite a while, and it's pretty cool to see. Then also during this time after the funeral, we see Jim, Ethan, and Julie heading back home. But Ethan and Julie decide that they want to go check on the animals before it gets dark. So Jim heads back home alone, and once he's inside, the phone rings. And the voice on the other side goes, "Dad, it's Thomas."
Dad? It's Thomas.
What? And that's really the way they're going to leave us until next week. That's just dirty, man. Now, my personal thoughts on this is that no way in hell this is really Thomas. You gotta remember, Thomas died as a baby. He definitely wasn't talking at the time of his death, if I had to guess. I mean, Thomas literally died after rolling off the changing table. Now, this could be an alternate reality where this is an older version of Thomas that never died that he's calling from, but I doubt it. I think this is very similar to what Boyd experiences sometimes with Abby in moments of vulnerability. And my theory is that now they want to test Jim to see if they can finally get him to snap. So I think they're going to target the one thing in his life that he is most vulnerable and feels responsible for, and that's his son Thomas's death. Also, how are they actually going to try to catch one of the monsters is the next big question here. Now, of course, the popular suggestion is that they need to try using a talisman to see if it would have the reverse effect if the monsters were in the inside and not on the outside trying to get in. Plus, we still don't know how they'll react to sunlight when they're alive. And yes, Grin and Gary's corpse was left outside in season 2 after Boyd killed him, but he was already dead, so it may not have the same effect as a dead vampire who's left outside and his body just burst into flames. It could be a different effect on the monsters. Plus, if sunlight wasn't a threat to them, we would see them out during the day. And I doubt the answer for why we don't see them out during the day is that they're just getting their rest. So of course there's something to it here. Also, I would have liked to actually see Kenny try to kill one with fire. That would have been one of those things we could have finally checked off our list to see if they could die by fire. But there's still more to come, so we can't count out anything just yet. So as always, leave y'all's thoughts down below so we can get everyone's take on this. But that's all I have for this week, and until next time, thank you guys for watching.